Hostiles ahead! Light them up!
Hey up everyone, and welcome back to Combat Mission Black Sea, where we're doing a bit of reconnaissance. Patton famously said to his recce troops, drive down that road until you get blown up. Fast forward to Battlefront's hypothetical Ukrainian conflict in 2017, and well, my Scout Bradley here is a bit better at taking care of itself than a couple of GIs in a Willis Jeep. Nonetheless, really wasn't expecting to run into the recce screen of the advancing Russian 30th Motor Rifle Brigade quite so early, so I need to rein in my scouts a bit. This is the first mission of the US campaign. The Russians have crossed the Dnieper River before turning north and driving for Kiev. My job is to take my American task force and counterattack straight into Ivan's face. So, understanding that, my impression was that I would have a kind of meaty engagement on my hands in this mission, and I wanted to get my initial recce force into some good early observation posts to get a picture of the enemy that my first main force units arriving in 10 minutes time can exploit. But the Russians, or at least some Russian recce troops, are already here. So that's that plan kiboshed. The plus side is that I'm gaining information all the time. The Bradley and the Scout Platoon headquarters in the centre have uncovered enemy positions and they're engaging them. On the left, I'm setting up to get eyes on the far right side of the valley, and on my right, there's no real sign of enemy forces, so I'm moving to get both my sniper team and this Scout Humvee into good positions to watch the left side of the valley. That's about all I can do with two Humvees, a sniper team and a Bradley until I get some reinforcements. So, what's my overall plan here? Well, my objectives are to hurt the enemy, cause enemy casualties, keep my casualties to a minimum, and to take and hold the government complex here on this hill, objective Falcon, down in the bottom of the valley, and to secure all these little checkpoints spread around to secure the area, secure the lines of communication for follow-on forces. This is a full-on counter-attack, and I'm just the tip of the spear. Looking at the ground, my immediate thought is that I need to control the high ground here. In particular, the government complex is going to be a solid observation and fire support position for my infantry. The other side of the valley is higher, but it's more heavily wooded, which is going to reduce my options with vehicle movement, and I don't have the manpower to start clearing these woods out if they're full of enemy infantry. So the broad plan is to take and hold the government complex, to use it as a position to destroy the enemy. I want to seize the dominant ground and then exploit its killing potential. But how does that tie in with what the enemy is going to be doing? Well, the Russians here are advancing with the usual combined arms arrangement. Apparently, according to the briefing, I can expect BMPs and T-72s. They've already been dropping artillery on these buildings beneath the government complex, and they have this recce screen out in front, some of which is burning away nicely. This is a campaign, so there's two big things to bear in mind here. Firstly, the enemy is not controlled by a human player, it's controlled by the AI. But because this is a scenario rather than a quick battle, the scenario designer can really fine-tune the AI plan to the map, the forces involved, and the particular setup. Unlike the randomness of a quick battle, there are new AI triggers as well that can give the AI a degree of reaction to what's going on, and overall it might best be thought of as a kind of tactical problem to solve, or a challenge that's been set by the level designer, in this case someone who works for Battlefront and knows the game inside out. Or if you want to look at it another way, it's an interesting reflection on the difference between the tactical focus of Western professional militaries and the more operational focus of Russian doctrine. Either way, in these circumstances, the AI isn't exactly a total pushover, and it's going to punish me whenever I give it the opportunity. The second thing to bear in mind, because this is a campaign, is that I've only got a finite force to work with, and I can't count on getting casualty replacements for everything. This is essentially a string of linked scenarios, and the consequences are going to stack up by the end. So, dead pixel truppen, damaged vehicles may or may not come back, but at least a little bit of good news. My ammunition is going to be fully restocked in between each battle, so I don't have to worry about holding fire too much. After a few engagements by the Recce troops and a bit of artillery fire, it's 10 past 12 and my Abrams platoon and my first Bradley platoon have turned up. The armoured infantry is going off to assault the government complex, and they're going to be covered by a 2-tank section of Abrams on this hill at the back. The other 2 tanks are going to be moving a little bit further forward to cover down the valley. I am expecting enemy tanks here. I've already got some indications of tanks down in this valley here, so I'm sending a drone over there to take a look. It would be bad news if a load of T-72s got up onto that high ground on my right. Certainly bad news for the scouts up there. So if it looks like that's where they're going to be pushing, I can shuffle some Abrams onto this hill on my left to catch the enemy as they cross the fields over on the other side. I've also got a very nasty surprise lined up for that general area, but it hasn't arrived quite yet. So, thinking about assaulting the government complex with the Bradley platoon, I'm going to be moving across the valley side to these buildings here, which the enemy has just finished trying to flatten. And I want to use that area as a staging point / firing position. The problem is that I've got to cross some open ground that may or may not be covered by enemy units that I haven't seen yet. So the Bradleys are going to be dashing across one at a time to try and minimise the risk. The first Bradley that tries spots another Russian scout car down on the main road near CP-105 and opens up on it. And the Russians panic, not surprising, and reverse out into the middle of the road where one of the Abrams sees it, and yeah, nobody's going to walk away from that. The 2 center Abrams also spot a T-72 down the valley and quickly take it out with a 1600 meter snapshot, while the Abrams supporting the Bradleys pushing the government complex start putting high explosive into the buildings. The scout platoon's little Raven drone is already up eyeballing that objective, and it's spotted a few Tiger reconnaissance vehicles so far. That makes about a platoon of reconnaissance troops in my book, and I'm trying to whittle them down with the tanks and some 155mm artillery before my infantry get there. A little while later, the center Abrams schwack another T-72 at the far end of the valley. The Russians really do seem to be massing tanks over there, so I'm switching my second section of Abrams onto my left, up onto that hill to try and catch them in the flank if they advance. And when the drone gets online over there, it starts to show up a few more tanks, which I really want to deal with. They could cause me some serious problems. I'm about 15 minutes in here though, and I've got another wave of reinforcements, including a pair of Apache gunships. 10 guesses who they're going to go see first. I've also got another armoured infantry platoon, and I'm moving them up the valley bottom to the scout platoon HQ. From there they should be able to either support the attack on the government complex, push towards objective Falcon, or hold off the Russians if they push down the valley. Depends what happens. And I was really counting on a bit of flexibility from them, but as soon as they move up they come under some RPG fire from more Russian Recce troops, and they get into an engagement, taking out another scout car. This is why the Russians are a pain to play against. They have RPGs coming out of their ears. I'm really not too keen on getting too close until I've artied the crap out of some of those buildings. Speaking of artillery, I'm really feeling the need to hurry up with the government complex assault. My Bradley platoon is looking very clumped up in an area the Russians have previously artied, and I'm not keen on hanging around in case they drop some there again. But they're clumped up there for a reason. If they spread out a little bit more, they're going to be exposed to those T-72s on the other side of the valley. I'm still waiting for some of my artillery to fall on the front of the government complex, and that's stopping me from sending some infantry scouts out to find out if there's any nasties in those windows waiting to shoot at me. So I kind of have to wait, and I don't like it very much. My scout Humvee and sniper team up on the right are getting some spots on the ridgeline behind the government complex. They've seen a couple of trucks, probably either sappers or mortar teams, and some BMP-2Ms. The BMP-2M is basically a modernised BMP-2. It's got thermal sights, it's got the 30mm cannon, and it's got some new anti-tank missiles. So they might still be combination coffin crematoriums, but they can put the hurt out. One of them has spotted the scout Humvee and opened up on it. The TAC AI on the Humvee is putting some pretty optimistic return fire back, but I'm going to have to pull those scouts back a little bit before they get wasted. A few minutes on, the Apaches and the artillery are about to come in. I have a little bit of a panic moment because a Russian Igla anti-aircraft team pops up down the valley, but they get evaporated by a 120mm high explosive shell. That shot must have given the Abrams position away though, because its laser warning receiver trips off immediately after, so someone is hitting it with a laser rangefinder, and the TAC AI for the tank pops smoke and reverses. The only thing that could really be lasing it is another tank or top-notch Russian anti-tank guided missile system like the AT-14. So that Abrams is not going back into the same place. I'm going to reverse it up and bring it back into a different position further back. Just as the artillery starts falling on the government complex, the T-72s on the right start to move. And luckily for them, this is exactly when the Apaches turn up, and there's nothing that those ugly tank hunting helicopters like more than finding tanks out in the open. I am going to have to reorientate a little bit though. The two Abrams I have on my left up on the hill that I want to back up the Apaches against these tanks are currently blowing more holes in the government complex. So they're going to be coming down into some better defilade positions to get that flanking fire on any of those T-72s that the Apaches don't take out. This brings us to turn 23, which is when a lot happens all at once. Over on the right, the Apaches bag another T-72, and the only T-72 that gets across the fields into the relative safety of this tree line is quickly taken out by my two Abrams on the left. In the centre, I've tried to move the rest of my sniper platoon forward in this Humvee, but an unseen Russian tank up the valley annihilates it, killing absolutely everybody inside. But the real shit show is over at the government complex, because my impatience has gotten the better of me and I've sent the Bradleys in. Ivan is also moving in from the other side. I managed to nail a BMP at point blank range, but my left hand Bradley takes an RPG-18 to the turret, disabling the tow missiles. Then another, which kills the commander, wrecks the optics and panics the crew right before we get a laser warning, and an AT-14 missile from one of the BMP-2Ms slams into the Brad as everyone is trying to get out. Only the gunner and the squad leader actually make it. The right-hand Bradley on the other side also takes an RPG-18. This one hits above the explosive reactive armor on the front, takes out the driver, takes out the engine, and takes out 4 of the riflemen in the back. Everybody panics and bails out. The rear ramp isn't working, so the infantry have to escape through the emergency door. In return, I've taken out 2 BMP-2Ms, but that's not a very good trade at all. There's no way that one squad and the platoon HQ can take the government complex on their own, and I've taken a serious hit because I didn't wait for one more turn. When you weigh up the possibility of getting hit by artillery when there are no enemy spotting rounds falling anywhere near you, versus the possibility of getting hit by infantry anti-tank weapons fired by Russian recce troops that I knew were in those buildings, not to mention exposing one of the Bradleys to unmolested enemy infantry fighting vehicles in depth, then I really made a bad decision here. As if that wasn't bad enough, I've pretty much done exactly the same thing in the centre. I'm trying to probe forward with my other Bradley platoon, and the lead vehicle is knocked out by an RPG. There are no casualties, but the Pixel Truppen are too shocked to fight for a little while, and to make matters worse, Ivan is dropping artillery down at the crossroads. It's not totally bad news. The centre T-72 that killed half my sniper platoon suffers death by Abrams, but next turn the same RPG team takes out another Bradley at about 500 meters and then gets reinforced by what looks like dismounted motor rifle infantry coming down the main road. So things aren't looking fantastic. I've made some mistakes, some pretty amateurish mistakes, like not sending scouts out first and assuming that vehicles 500 meters away from the RPG Vasily Zaitsev are safe. But most of my combat power is still very much intact. It's still extremely dangerous, and it's looking like the Russians are dead set on moving forward and coming to me. And if that's what they want to do, then okay. I'm sending drones up to get eyes on the ridge behind the government complex and Objective Falcon. I'm finally setting up an OP in this tower where I'm going to be able to see pretty much everything. The Apaches are coming in again, and I'm calling in fire missions like crazy. Pretty soon there's plenty of 155mm shells coming down around Vasily Zaitsev's RPG team. But the main drama while I'm waiting for most of the fires to come in is the government complex tower. The platoon HQ at the top is trying very hard to not get noticed, but Russian infantry are moving into the complex right in front of them. The remnants of their platoon isn't really in a state to help out, especially with other Russian forces so close, and I don't want to abandon such a fantastic observation post. So the HQ is calling in some danger close artillery and quickly finding religion. They only have to wait for a few minutes, and the Russian infantry on the rooftops are getting hammered, but the platoon HQ gets spotted, and I'm lucky it's not the officer calling in the RT who goes down. He's bailed out at the last moment by some area fire from one of the Abrams. He legs it down the tower and completes the call for fire just in time. That blocking RT is going to keep the Russians from overrunning my pixel trip and up at the government complex. Meanwhile, in the centre, my attempts to hold on to this house here are disappearing in a hail of RPGs and casualties. Even though I can't hold on to it, it's attracting enough attention to give me targets to light up. The Russians are still intent on advancing, and just as the Apaches are coming in again, two of the tank spots down in the centre slip out of their engagement area. That doesn't stop the Apaches from picking up the BMP-2Ms, and the centre Abrams bag one more up on the ridgeline. It seems as though the ridgeline behind the government complex has been softened up a bit. There's a lot of burning vehicles up there, and there's no sign of any more enemy activity on the far right. I'm creeping my left-hand Abrams section up into hull-down positions on top of this hill on the left, where they can hopefully finish off the remaining BMP-2Ms and be in a better position to deal with the T-72 lurking just on the other side of the crest line if it decides to move. The other three T-72s I've spotted, the ones that I'm really worried about, are slowly moving up in the centre, and I'm rushing one of the centre Abrams to get some flanking angles on them, when it turns out that Ivan is pushing the government complex at the same time. This is another turn where a lot of things happen at once. The first BMP to come up gets hit by flanking fire from one of the Bradleys, and actually manages to fire a single 30mm round that bounces off the nearest Abrams before the second Abrams here blows it away. The second BMP to turn up at the government complex comes in on the right, and one of the original scout teams have a go at it with AT-4s but miss. Then, three of the Bradleys and an Abrams literally Swiss cheese the thing. The T-72 also moves forward, coming over the crest at point blank range to both Abrams, who take it out pretty quickly. Down in the centre, the first T-72 eats a Hellfire missile from an Apache. The second T-72 is hit by an AT-4, which doesn't make it through the reactive armour, and then by a barrage of HEDP grenades from an M25 grenade launcher, which penetrate but don't stop the tank from returning fire. After about 30 seconds though, and after the third T-72 makes the fatal mistake of using the main road, it decides that it needs to be somewhere else, but the infantry aren't going to take all that abuse lying down, and they introduce it to the Javelin before it can make good its escape. And then, all of a sudden, the Russians surrender, which is nice of them. If they're going to hand me a tactical victory like this, I'll take it. Because they've surrendered, I've managed to secure all of the ground objectives, which I definitely didn't think I was going to be doing. I've also got the points for inflicting enemy casualties. The Russians have lost 121 men dead, 33 men wounded. They've lost 11 T-72s, 12 BMPs, 8 Tiger reconnaissance vehicles and some Urals, and they've lost a drone which has crashed when its operator has been killed. On the flip side, I haven't got the full score. I've lost points because I haven't kept my casualties down. I've lost 21 men dead, 8 wounded, 4 Bradleys have been knocked out, and then there was that Humvee, which, yeah, there's not a lot left of that. And, yeah, there we go. So, we've taken the blow from the 30th Motor Rifle Brigade, heading towards Kiev. Now, follow-on forces can go through here and maintain the pressure, keep the counter-attack rolling on the Russians, and we'll see what the campaign has lined up for us in the next mission. So, hope you enjoyed that, guys, and I'll catch you in the next video.